when you look at things like Confucius and some of those Eastern philosophers and stuff like that. There's so much that is passed down to and then so much of the history we have is because
so long we're on that train, we're
fantastic enough that
we are here.
Breaker. Do we have sound? Do we have video? We're here.
We are live on the Joe and Doug Show. Welcome to another episode. We're pumped to chat with you a little bit. So Joe just got back from Williamsburg. So what was the highlight of the historical spot, or was the highlight just being with the family and hanging out?
Well, I'm telling you, the ghost tour. I know you.
Yeah, I did a ghost tour in Philly. I'll have to tell you about at some point.
It was so good. But
so is it like late at night and you got lanterns and stuff, and you go around and
these people were such good storytellers.
Yeah.
Like I almost wanted to go back to the campfire and try to emulate just how good they were at telling those stories.
Yeah.
So much impressed.
Very cool. Yeah, there's a great book called The Art of Storytelling that looks at Jesus's storytelling ability and is encouraged for, I think I took it in advanced preaching class. I had to read that book. But Sam and I went, the only time I've done a ghost tour, we did all the Philly tours. We did a food tour and we did the horse and carriage ride through Old City. And we did, all the tours you can do in the city because that was our city for a long time. And we, the one night, it was summertime, it was hot. And we were like, what do you want to do tonight? Well, let's go to the city. We'll get some food. And then I looked up and there was this ghost tour at 9:00. And it met at a cemetery, and this guy shows up in full 17th century regalia with a lantern and stuff.
Exactly.
Totally in character for the whole night. And it was neat because it wasn't just it wasn't weird ghost stories, but for them it was the history of this building burnt down and all these people died in here, and people said they've can hear them calling out from the dead, but they tell the story in a way my favorite one was one of the wealthiest families in Philadelphia that had the first indoor toilet. It wasn't like an outhouse built in their house. They all died of dysentery because they built the toilet next to their water source.
That's great. That's a good idea.
And they're telling it, and it's haha, but the whole family died of dysentery, and they couldn't figure out why.
Mm-hmm.
And now we look at it, and we're like, well, because you were drinking your poo. Yeah, yum. So a ghost tour was cool. What was Ryan and Deb's highlights?
Let's see. What was cool about it, and this goes along with the storytelling, you can approach one of the characters and in character have a conversation with you as if it were in the 1700s. And that was pretty cool. That was impressive that they're able to do that. But I guess if that's your job, then you get good at it.
Absolutely. That's very cool. So the topic I want to talk about tonight, I want to talk about the word loyalty.
Okay.
I want to unpack that because you have some people that's an unhealthy word. They think of the mob and that sort of stuff. Right. And other people think of, a healthy sense of loyalty. I have a loyalty to my wife. I have a loyalty to my children. I have a loyalty to the church. And so there's healthy loyalty and unhealthy loyalty, but a lot of people either have one vantage point or the other. They're either and then people in authority that demand loyalty sometimes feel icky to us. That's something that you earn, you don't demand. But I don't know if you've ever been in those, jobs where you have to be loyal to, the boss or whatever. And it kind of has that, you got to kiss the ring kind of feel. And people bucket that a little bit. They're kind of whatever. Reminds me of a scene. I forget what movie it is. It's Ben Affleck and he comes barging in and his buddy's sitting on the couch, watching Netflix or whatever. And he goes, listen, there's something you can never ask me about ever again. And we're going to have to hurt some people. And dude doesn't hesitate. He goes, whose car are we taking? And they get up and go. And it's you feel that friendship loyalty in that moment. Hey, I'll help you bury the body and we'll figure this out. So I want to talk about that a little bit. Because I know it's different in a business context. It's different in a family context. There's parameters for it. And I don't think it's, quite as endearing as, the mob boss or kissing the Pope's ring or stuff like that. That kind of takes it to a weird space, I think. But I want to hear Joe's kind of approach to loyalty, friendship, that sort of stuff, and we can talk about what that looks like in business and life.
Well, see, I love the feeling that loyalty gives, and when people can cooperate together and not put up defenses. And so I'm really quick to offer a loyalty, and I have weird names for it, but in this case, it's Business Joe and Regular Joe.
Okay.
Right? Everybody gets to court Regular Joe from the get-go.
Sure.
It only switches to Business Joe when the loyalty is questioned, whether or not it's somebody doesn't like me as I thought, as much as they thought. Maybe they don't respect my time. Maybe they don't, aren't going to treat me like I treat them. And then we just go more of a transactional version of it. But because it's, I get hurt a lot more doing this approach because you obviously extend it to people who don't deserve it. But then again, I think I do more of it. I'm able to share earlier on, and I think it breaks down some defenses. I've never really had the icky kind of loyalty because I sort of have really proper boundaries.
Sure. Yeah. And that's the whole thing is you can get unhealthy boundaries in that space where, well, you're supposed to be loyal to me, so you have to do something that you're now not comfortable with. That doesn't. No, thank you. Thanks for playing. We'll move on. But I think, for most people thinking about loyalty, we don't necessarily put people in categories or think that way. But I guess a question I'd push back to you, do you think because you extend loyalty quickly, you may get hurt more, but do you also receive more loyalty in return?
Yeah, because I think a lot of, especially good people, when they're given something that they don't deserve, they try to pay it back and pay it forward to you.
Even bad people.
Bad people do that?
Oh yeah,
really?
All the time. We will have people that we will help out, in benevolence in some way. Walk in, they're down on tough times, and I'm not judging their character, good people, bad people, whatever, but they have no reason to come and pay it back. But I can't tell you how many times we've had not just people in the church, but even other folks being like, you guys help me out with my electric bill here, pay it forward to the next person needs it. Now I got a job or whatever. I have watched that dozens of times where somebody who I maybe thought, well, we're blessing them, that's what we're supposed to do. And then they show up, 6 months later, hey, I got a new job and I just wanted to come back and say thank you for, helping me out with my rent or whatever it is when we do that through benevolence at the church. And that always surprises me, and it shouldn't,
right?
But it always does, because there's some people like, oh, they'll pay back, and then they don't. And I'm like, what the heck? You think they would, and then other people surprise you. And so I'm sure it's probably the same with
and I'm thinking the number's about 50%, because you have the people who get into the loyalty circle, and that's about 25%. You have 25 that will just never, but the 50% in the middle would have never hit the needle where you didn't know if you could trust them or not. And so you probably wouldn't have gone in the territory where they could be one of your loyal friends or, acquaintances.
Confidants. Yeah, sure. Right. And so loyalty, you just use the word trust. And I think it's a huge point to make. Loyalty takes trust. Like, you have to put yourself out there. And at some level, whether it's, in a marriage, you're loyal to your spouse. And so you're putting yourself out there. I tell Sam all the time, like, she could crush me. Like, she knows everything. She's got my social security number. Like, I mean, in a very practical way, she could crush me, and in a very emotional way. But you put yourself in that place because, I trust you completely. And that's a very vulnerable place to be. And so loyalty creates a vulnerability because it requires trust. Trust is tough to get back once it's broken. What does that look like in a relationship where, you've been loyal, or someone had been loyal to you, but then trust gets broken?
Well, they live in that Business Joe circle for a really long time. And I do believe that people can come back from that, but it's really tough. It's not easily extended because I kind of bless you with it in the beginning when you didn't deserve it. If you show me that you don't deserve it, that carries lots more weight with me.
No, that's good. I wonder if someone's trying to get back on their feet. We talk about second chances all the time. What are some things they should do if they want to be trusted with more? And what are some things they probably should stop doing because people aren't going to trust them while they do that? Because, I know you've extended some opportunities to people that are down on their luck or recovering addicts or whatever. And sometimes that's been kind of cool. And other times it was like you get ghosted or whatever.
Right.
So what are some of those things if somebody's thinking, well, nobody ever extends me loyalty? How can they attract loyalty to them?
Well, Deb and I had this conversation. It's sort of connected to it where we were talking, we don't lend money. Like, if we lend money to you, then The only thing I can trust in that is I probably won't get it back. And I'm
So you
super
might as well give
surprised.
it.
Yeah, but give it as a gift, no matter what the
Mhm.
the conditions are. But I think that when you're in that spot, you have to be willing to do more than just a 1-for-1 trade with things. You got to be able to put yourself out there as being willing to help without even the clear, pathway to being helped in the first place. Because I mean, we talk about it a lot. You got to give to get. And
Mhm.
so if you want to get in the mindset of being a recipient of not gratitude, charity or whatever, you got to see if there's anything in your life that you can extend that charity.
release.
It's not always money. Usually the most valuable
100%.
charity is not monetary.
Yeah. Time, relationship.
sure.
Yep. Absolutely. So I'm going to throw a spiritual concept in here that I think will be interesting. We'll probably develop other language as the show goes, and I'll derail us here. I'm going to do the derailing today.
Yes, you get your turn.
So the way I talk about it with marital couples, but it even works outside of marriage. A lot of people live in a contractual world. Now, that's a very business term, right? That's, hey, Joe, I'm going to do this for you, and therefore you're going to do this for me. And as long as we both hold up our end of the bargain, our relationship's copacetic. But the moment this side starts to lag, it gets frustrating. And then eventually we either end the contract or we have a meeting saying, hey, you said you were going to do this. Now I need you to step up and hold your end of the bargain. But we have this picture given to us in scripture of a covenantal relationship. We see God enters into covenants with people. Other people enter into covenants with one another. Even the language we use when we do a wedding ceremony is the covenant of marriage. Like you're making a covenant, and a covenant is deeper than a contract. And this is where people go off on their marriage stuff. People will say, well, marriage is 50-50. And I'm like, no, a contract is 50-50. You're entering into a covenant, not the contract of marriage, but a covenant of marriage. And a covenant is 100-0. That's like, I'm all in for Joe, whether I get anything from Joe. Debbie bought in to Joe Danier, whether he was rich or poor, whether he was sick or healthy. Like that's why we say those vows. And obviously in the context of marriage, it's a little bit different. That's a sacred kind of institution. But I'm finding myself as I get older to really value relationships where I go, that person doesn't get anything out of this. I'm here and they are just pouring in, and I just feel like, man, I'm over the top. Like I want to give back and I want to serve and I want to be a part of their world and relationship, but I just feel like I'm getting away with a king's ransom in relationships. And I just so appreciate those covenantal relationships where people aren't here because, oh, I can get this from Doug. Or people aren't here because, oh, he'll give me counseling if I do this, or he'll help me with this, so I guess I'll help take care of. But people that are just 100% in for me because of me, like there's no strings attached to that. And it's a beautiful picture, and it tends to have a religious connotation. But I think there's something to that that we can kind of jump the chasm here onto the other side and take it out of a spiritual realm. Obviously the marriage illustration is the best one because that's kind of where it starts. But do you find yourself having those relationships where you look at your life and you go, this is like the best, like they are all in for me, and if I didn't do this and didn't do that, and sometimes you even test those boundaries, like if I stopped doing this, or if I stopped calling, or if I stopped doing that, like they're still making an investment. And those type of people like mean the world to me. And then I try and be that for other people. Do you have those relationships? Do you feel like, I mean, obviously I think you probably say that about Deb. I have no doubt.
Yeah.
But does that concept make sense?
Well, I have a really difficult time receiving. And so that I almost have to be the Saint Nick portion of it because I'm just so terrible at it. I don't know how to receive it. I'm probably not gracious when I receive it. It's all clumsy and whatever. So I'd much rather like to redirect a gift to somebody else because I'm just so bad.
Yeah.
I do have a ton of people though that in your case, like I even consider your friendship here.
100%. I would consider that as well.
When we can't find out who the giver and receiver is, that's the perfect relationship. And
exactly.
that's what I pray for, those kinds of relationships.
Well, it's like one of those things that, and I've said this to people and people don't think I mean it. like there have been people that I'm like, listen, if you never come to my church, if you stop attending services, if you like, if all of a sudden your life shifts, if you have to move away, like I understand parameters change, but like our relationship is deeper than that. I heard a pastor friend of mine say, like, if he goes, I want the relationships that if the church closed tomorrow, we're still showing up to hang out. Like that's a different level. Like
Right.
if we're just showing up because contractually you like my preaching, or I was there for your family in a moment. But if we're like in a deep relationship like that, where it's like church or no church, job or no job, family, like we're all in, like chips are in the middle of the table. That type of relationship where you don't know who's giving and receiving, where you're just I'm in, like it doesn't matter what I get out of it. Well, don't you want to be sure? Don't you want to hedge your bets? Like people, and I'm like, no, because I'm loyal in this relationship, and that's different. It carries a different weight, and it lets you do things that you can't do in other relationships.
Right. And also, like with transactional, there's always disappointment, no matter how noble
100%.
it is, because you're always like counting the chips to make sure that they're always of equal value. I even have some customers where I've been through some of the boundaries of just having transactions where I hear a story about they're in peril. And when I do the thing and rescue them, I'm thinking, well, I wasn't Youngstown Computer when I did it. I was Joe. I'm not billing for that one because that was Joe coming and rescuing. They just happened to call Youngstown Computer and got me on the line.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally connect with that. I have over the years, I've seen that a lot, and people expect sometimes that from clergy, which is an interesting expectation. They expect me to give 30 minutes of counseling in the Cheerio aisle at 9:00 at night.
Right.
It's a 24/7 kind of deal, but I'm sure you have a little bit of that in IT. People call you at 8:00 at night. My thing's not working. Well, listen, I'm home with my family, or whatever. You bump into them in a store. Hey, can I ask you about the new whatever? And so there's some of that in other professions as well. But I think most people anticipate when they're calling Youngstown Computers, he's going to bill me. He's got to, there's that kind of expectation. And I find it very fascinating in the service industry department where that kind of nonprofit, like everybody expects everything for free. And some of that is reciprocal though, because I've worked in plenty of churches where they're like, well, you're a graphic designer, just do this work for us for free. And it's like, well, that's what they do for a living. Like we shouldn't anticipate just because we're the church that they should do it for free. And I've made a habit, and I've tried my best as we've had different people that are like, oh, I'll come in and take pictures, or I'll come in whatever. I'm like, well, how much do you want to charge for that? Oh, don't worry about it, Pastor. Listen, this is what I want you to do. I want you to treat me like a normal customer. And if you decide to donate this, that's on you. But I don't want you not to bill me because you think, oh, well, it's the church. And I get you want to be nice. That's fine. But I don't want to start with that expectation up front, because then it can create a weird relationship with us where you feel like, well, the only time he talks to me is when he wants something designed or when he wants
and it
something.
kind of devalues anyhow. You never want to ever give somebody that they're proud of and that it's their thing.
Exactly.
Because they're,
and I'd rather so into it, especially like a local business or whatever. And it's, to me, it's always that thing. Like if you're going to be faithful and you're going to show up and you're going to take pictures and you're going to sow your gift in, whatever that is. And I've said this from the platform. Some people, it's just, God's giving you the ability to make money, and you sow money into this cause or that thing. Like I want to honor that. And I never want to treat it in a way that devalues the gift, whether we're talking about somebody playing guitar on the platform or somebody taking pictures or somebody donating money. Like I always want to put them in a position where it's not a have to, but a get to, and it's a joy and not a burden. Because that'll strain our relationship, because then it becomes contractual.
Yep.
It's like, well, I really love you because you're a really good guitar player. Or, pastors do this a lot. Like they cater all these people, because one of the reasons I don't know what anybody gives at the church. I love that I don't know what anybody gives at the church. Now, there are times where people give special gifts and say, hey, pastor, take care of that. That's different. But on a routine basis, I have no idea. I don't know who gives $1. I don't know who gives $10,000. I don't know any of that stuff. Now, I know once it comes in, we do the budget and that sort of stuff. But in terms of individual givers, and that's a guard for me, because I don't want to cater to somebody because, wow, they gave $25,000 last year. I better take them out to dinner 3 times. Like I in my head, I don't want to do that. I want to, be able to just keep it in a space where, in the same way, the guitar player and the other thing, I just want people to be able to come and bring their gift. And I feel like it gets contractual when you're in that space.
Yeah. And when this connects to loyalty, like you would almost feel like they bought the loyalty,
right?
And you don't want that to be part in. And even if you would try to be unbiased, it would be terribly difficult to find out someone who's providing for you to not be loyal to them, because it would be inauthentic.
Well, and you have the inverse of that too, right? People like to use I don't know why we're getting on the church stuff, but you have people that over the years we've had people not necessarily at Bridge of Hope, but I've had people in ministry over the last 20 years where, well, pastor, I'll make a large donation if you'll do what I really want done.
Quid pro quo in church? Are you kidding me?
Bro, put my name on that pew and do this sort of thing. And it's like, what? I mean, are you giving this to the Lord or are you buying something that you really want to do? Like, by all means, like, go out and buy. But I always tell people, like, keep your money. I don't want strings attached to me, because then I'm going to feel like, well, did I do that the way they wanted? And then I'm enslaved to somebody that I don't need to be enslaved to. It's always very interesting. You know, and when you do that, right, people get attached to things. And I'm sure you've seen that in church. I'm sure you've seen it in business too. And you turn around and go to sell something, or you go in a different direction. Oh, those are my feeling like, no. You may have given the money and purchased that, but we're using it in this direction now. You know, it's an interesting thing when you start making everything contractual. It kind of takes loyalty out of the picture. Where that covenantal side is like, hey, I'm 100 to 0. Like, I'm giving this money, gift, whatever, and I don't need anything in return, because my return doesn't come from you. And I think that's a different mentality. Like, when you're giving, whether financial or whatever, when Joe's sowing something out, he's putting some sort of seed in the ground. Joe's allowing that to go into the dirt, and then his return isn't from the place that he put it in. It always comes from around the corner over here, that thing over there, the thing that you've been waiting on for the last, whatever. And so to me, I think when I think of that sort of relationship, it goes into a different space when it's 100 to 0 versus 50-50.
Yeah, and it really is like a toxic thing. Like, it's human nature, though, that when you give, that it's taking a portion of you that is kind of selfless, but a part of you wants to see what happens to the seed, or wants to get some acknowledgement or some congratulations. The problem is that it skews your motivation, and it toxifies why you do things. And if you start not being able to figure out whether the accolades were what you were after, or doing something, like, I'll go in the blind, and if I start questioning my motives on something, I'll make sure that nobody knows what I did, and see if I still have the fuel to be able to do it.
Yeah, it's always interesting when stuff's public. You wrestle with those sort of things. There's a scripture, Joe.
Thank you.
That literally in the same passage, God says, to set yourself like a city on a hill, so that men can see your good deeds and praise God in heaven. And then in like the same passage, he says, when you give, don't let your left hand know what your right hand's doing. And it's like, am I a city on a hill that people should see my good deeds and thank God for them, or should I do it in secret? And I think the answer is both.
Yeah, I think that balance. Absolutely.
Yeah, there's times where, it should be public, so that
inspire other people.
Exactly. And then there's times where, it's got to be private. And hey, I need to check my own motivation to make sure, was I just doing this because it was on YouTube or whatever, or am I doing this because, man, I sowed a seed? Is my loyalty to the applause that I'm going to get, or is it to the actual act of giving or sowing in some sort of way?
Yeah. And if you set that, if you set sort of like the mentorship for other people to be able to give, like, okay, so if I give, and then somebody sees that it was given, but they did it for, reasons to get the same applause, then you set up a new generation of givers for the absolute wrong reasons. So, I mean, and in the end goal, that somebody got something because of it, but for the wrong motivations, and you have a poison generation from it.
So how do you, loyalty is used in a different way. How do you develop loyal customers, right? There's, I buy all Apple products. I'm a loyal customer in that way. I would never consider buying a different computer, or a different phone, or a different set of headphones, or take your pick. Like, I've bought into the brand in that way. Other people, you are a loyal Tesla owner. You love your Teslas, and in that space, like, people are loyal to certain things. And what develops that brand loyalty? Why go back to the same spot? How do you do that in your business?
A whole discussion its own. You ready for this? I'm gonna crack my knuckles on this one, because brand loyalty is not always making people happy. It's not always perfection. In fact, if a brand is never challenged, right, you don't really know if you're in love with it, right? Yep. And so I think there's a lot of comfort in doing business with me and bringing, money to me, because I established the trust by giving you the option to break up with me and making sure that you would choose me again if that's the case. So if I'm holding you hostage, you're only here because you have to or whatever, then I don't know that if you choose me again today, I've given you the choice, right? So like the most strained relationships that I've had end up being the strongest ones because someone was able to contemplate and say, okay, well, I'm not with Joe anymore. I thought his pricing was a little too high. So I shopped other people and whoa, I love Joe. And when they come back around, they have a new appreciation for something that they may have been taken, for granted.
Yeah. So, the traditional sense of, brand loyalty, you go back into the, 60s, 70s, 80s, you had the sales guy that was like, you're going to buy from me, right? Everything was coaxing you into the sale. We have the best price. We have this. But I feel like brand loyalty today is you have a relationship with the company. You buy into their values. There's an authenticity you feel like you can trust, similar to, a personal relationship like we were talking about earlier. And so social media allows you a window into that through Facebook and YouTube. Your Youngstown studio becomes a person in that sense.
Right.
And so people connect with that, and I've learned some of this in the way that the church does social media and stuff like that. You've scolded me a few times when there were times where I was like, well, that's a blemish. Let's get rid of it. And you're like, no, that's the gold. Stop.
Good stuff.
That's the good stuff. That's where you're going to build the brand loyalty. That's where you're going to build the authenticity. That's where you're going to build some of those things. And it's taken some learning, but now I know not to touch some of those things and to just let them be. And some of them take care of themselves, but everybody panics when there's a blemish. And I think that was if you look at businesses in the 70s, 80s, even the 90s, it was very, everything had to be perfect, and it was a kind of a suit and tie look to all businesses, and it had to have a polish and a shine, and it never did anything wrong. And the value now is creating an authentic feel to the brand that people will connect with and be inspired by. And so they do that through social media, and you have these brands that you're like, well, that, I would never look at another pair of sunglasses or whatever, because I've connected, I bought the narrative, and I'm loyal to them. But if a brand goes off and does something out of character, everybody goes, whoa, can't buy that. I'm going to use a great example. So there's a guy I follow on TikTok who's very funny, and he threw out a video of himself making a fake meal at a gas station. And he blew up and made this cardboard cutout that was like 70 inches tall of him eating like a sandwich or whatever, and it was the whatever meal at this gas station. And then he just showed up. He had to rent a U-Haul because it was that big. Showed up, brought the thing in there, talked to the employee, and just set up this thing for this meal. And everybody's like, that's hilarious. And it stayed in there. And then people were taking pictures with it, and they were going back in. And but then the company that he put it off as if it was undercover. The company didn't know anything about it, any of that sort of stuff. And then the company comes out and goes, look at how funny this is. We worked this out in advance. And so he did it as if it was like a haha slut. He got blasted, lost followers for being inauthentic. And so he did like an apology tour on TikTok, but it sapped all the funny out of the video. Was hilarious. But the fact that the company blew up his spot totally derailed.
Next, you're going to tell me that reality TV isn't real too. You're going to just ruin everything for me.
My wife loves Survivor. She has been watching since like season 1, season 2. And she's auditioned for the show. She wants to be on the show, loves Survivor. And we watch, our kids all watch. We watch every week. We watch it on Thursday because it's on too late for them Wednesdays. And they have their favorite players. They cheer people on. They're pumped. And so it's a family deal. But for the longest time, my brother and a few of our friends, when we watched it prior to having kids, they would all joke like, oh, which side of the island are they on this time? Are they on Hawaii on this side, Hawaii on that side? Because that was the big thing with Survivors. They would go to Africa or they would go here. And where are they going to go next year? And now I believe that the producers actually bought an island that they set up with all their games and move around and stuff. And but we always joked about, a lot of it's staged and you'll never know some of it, but some of it you will. But yeah, it's sad that reality TV is not real, Joe.
Scripted TV is
totally
not
is
real.
But people love it.
It is what it is.
It's cheap entertainment.
It is.
You take somebody who has no acting skills, you throw them on a camera, you put them in growing up, for us, I mean, you had some of the first ones, The Real World on MTV, and what the heck was the other show on there? But they were the first ones, like, oh, we're all going to move into an apartment in New York City and let cameras film us, and everybody's like, what a stupid idea. And
what if they all sit in the living room and just scroll on their phone? What do we do?
That would be a crappy show.
Throw in a grenade.
All right, so my wife was on a reality TV show. I'm totally going to forget the name of the show, but it followed a hair salon in New Jersey. It was on like TLC or one of those shows, and they needed a flash mob because one of the hairdressers, the Glam Fairy, was doing a special run of product, and so they needed women that had recently been married. So Sam and I were newly married that still had fit and had their wedding dress. So Sam was like, sweet, I get to wear my wedding dress again. So she gets this thing. She has to go to Hoboken. Her and her girlfriend go. They spend the whole day there. They have to learn this dance routine. They do this flash mob, get out of a limo, all this stuff. And the premiere's like 30 seconds. You know, you see her face for like 30 seconds on TV when we watch the show. And it's horrible. Jersey Shore, but in a hair salon. Okay, it was just a terrible show. And so here's my wife, dancing in her wedding dress in the middle of Hoboken.
Did you say Glamour Fairy?
Glam Fairy was the name.
Fairy.
Yeah.
What is that?
That's
the show title?
No, that's the lady's name who's on the show.
Oh, Glam Fairy. Okay.
I'm totally my wife will comment, I'm sure, at some point and say, oh, it was da-da-da show. I'm forgetting. I blocked it out. But my wife said the crazy thing on the show is, we watched an episode or two before she went, and I was like, you're really going to be on the show? Kind of deal. But they shoot the outside of the salon, and it's an actual salon, but none of the people that are on the show actually work there. And then they shoot the other stuff in a set, basically. And she goes, and we're there learning our dance, and we're getting to watch them do the scenes or whatever. The director's like, you're about to get a call on your phone, you're going to be pissed at so and so, and she's like, it's all staged. So she got to see some of the behind the scenes on that, and very interesting stuff. And that's was not a high-end reality TV show by any means. They actually, the one place where they were supposed to do the flash mob, they didn't even get a permit for the city to close down the road. And so they tried to just show up and do it. They had to drive to an abandoned parking lot and do it. She goes, they didn't even have the permits and stuff. The police came and shut them down. I was like, it's a real high-class show. But we got from loyalty to reality TV.
What the heck? You said you were going to derail us. I didn't know that it was going to be this bad.
I did.
Hey, my wife critiqued my presentation, and she said that I use a lot of filler words when I'm on this show, like ams and uns, and I never noticed that I do that. Have I done that a lot this show?
I was not paying attention.
Okay. Well, I'm cognizant. I'm aware now.
When you're aware, you think not to say those things, and you go with silence. The other podcast that I do, the producer that we have that's on the Zoom call with us, he will tell us it's harder for him to edit when we do the or the or the or even making noise in the background, because he edits because it's just audio only. And so he said to me and to Pesach, he's like, you guys use a lot of those filler words. You need to be cognizant of it. He goes, it'll just save me on the editing. I can edit them out, but you do too many of them and can't edit them all out because it gets a little choppy at that point. So it's actually been funny. I've actually been more cognizant, partly because he's staring at me on the Zoom call. And if you start doing too many of them, he gives you kind of
eyes of disappointment.
No, Scott's great, but it's been a big help, because the first couple episodes we did, he was like, there's too much of this. There's too much pontificating and other stuff. So yeah, it's one of those things that I don't think about when I preach, but that's a different mode of communication. But when you're having a conversation like this, I do it more in the beginning when we're kind of feeling out where we're going. But once we get in the conversation, I think we're both pretty.
I think I just buy myself time when I'm trying to think of the next thought, and I'll use a word, but I don't even know what that word would be. It's probably ums or ands or I don't know. I've never heard it.
Yeah. What is next on what is Joe looking for in terms of, are you looking to bring somebody on your team that I know for me, like, the next spot that we're looking to hire and bring in, and we're reworking some of our volunteers, and I have certain hierarchy of values that I look at, but loyalty is one of those things that, like, hey, if you're gonna be on the team and you want to wear the jersey, like, I need you to commit and wear the jersey. Do you have that conversation, like, when people come in, this is who we are, this is what our expectations are, and if you're gonna, when I played sports, if you're gonna wear the jersey and you're gonna play on the team, you got to be at practice, you got to do this. We have this expectation in the off season. Like, coach had that conversation with you, so you knew that if I'm putting this jersey on, this is the work that I did, and if I don't do that work, I don't get to put the jersey on. So do you have that conversation with people that
no, and thankfully that I've created enough enterprises that if I come across someone and really the thing I'm looking for in people are just good people, like honest people, and I can teach technical anything. So if somebody comes through here that's a little rough on the skill set side, but they're a good person, I could really work with that. So my thing is that let's spend some time together and let me learn you and you can learn me. And then we'll talk in 30 days to see if we have something there. So, I mean, because through any kind of interview process, I don't really get to the stuff that's really imperative to me. But after 30 days, once I know like what's on level, then we start talking like the longer term thing. It's almost like we date for 30 days. And then once we know whether or not it could be something serious, then we have those talks.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. And loyalty is not something you're going to know in an interview. It's not something you're probably even going to know in the first 30 days, but you can gauge somebody's character. You can gauge their, they might be putting their best foot forward, but you get to see the best version of themselves. And if that's not good, move on, which is good. So 30 days is usually your window to kind of gauge?
It seems like a good spot where 30 days is sort of like when you put two people in a room, they have that honeymoon phase where they say and do a lot of the things against who they really are, but that shine wears off and then you get the real version of them on that 31st day. So that's when I want to have that talk, when I see the shine is worn off a little bit.
Do you ever, so one of the skills that you learn dealing with people a lot is you can match energy and it will create a closeness in the relationship. So if you have somebody that comes in that's very excitable and you match that energy and you come up to that and you're high-fiving and, I don't know if you've ever met one of those guys at the gym that's, hey, what's up, bro? And high-five and everything. If you reciprocate that and match it back, like, oh, we're best friends. Like it jumps in. And then somebody else who's down here, now if I pick my energy up, they're going to feel alienated. But that when you match energy with people, it creates intimacy that you can't get any other way. They actually teach it as a sales trick to when you come into, when somebody's selling a car, if they come in and they're kind of, you just, you talk down here, but somebody comes in high energy, you match the energy and they feel like he gets me. And it creates a ploy. So if you notice a salesperson that's usually docile and they're matching your energy,
it makes me severely uncomfortable when someone is ratcheted up and I don't know why. Like if they're hopped up on something.
Sure.
But no, I mean, I would say that I'm probably really, I neuter that feeling pretty good because it's more like logic merit, and then we can escalate to a different level. Like you and I feel like we're pretty good at, we kind of suspend the getting our bearings and we just get into the relationship. But with regular people, I'm very very low key.
Yeah. So have you ever seen what's the show? The guys that are, I can see them. They're funny. There's 4 of them and they have an earpiece in and they go and they have to do
Practical Jokers.
Practical Jokers. Yes. They're from New Jersey. I should know that. So those guys, they do an episode where they have to show off an apartment and they have to do whatever the other guys are telling them to do. And this one guy comes in to this apartment and he is like, woo! I mean, he is amped. I mean, I've met some high energy people. He's like through the roof, and then they tell Murph, they're like, just match his energy. And so they're chest bumping, they're jumping on the couch together and stuff. And it escalates, and it's totally silly, but it illustrates that point that when you match energy, you tend to bring people closer together, to where if you're really high and another person's really low, you feel alienated.
I want to escape, so like I want to run away. But yeah, if Joe was on that show, I don't even know but what surprises me when they're crazy silly like that, people are still compliant with whatever they're doing. Like, there's spirits everywhere here. There's blood on the floor. They're going to sign the lease. What?
My favorite episode of that. So now we're on Impractical Jokers. is where Joe and Murph have to play strip high five in New York City, and they got to get people to give them a high five or they lose an article of clothing till one of them's naked. No. It is the best Impractical Jokers punishment. That show's hilarious. It stinks now because everybody knows who they are, but early on, nobody knew who they were. They were just a bunch of dudes running around, and they were in the Palisades Mall. They were in a couple different places. I'm like, oh, I know exactly.
People in Jersey, are they really that nice? Or because I always think of Jersey people of like not having a whole lot of tolerance for silliness, right? But everybody on that show seems like they're so cool.
No, it's a different. There's a camaraderie to it. Like we're pissed off together and we're happy together.
Fair enough.
as long as you're not being laughed at, I think is probably the thing. But well, anyway, we talked about loyalty. We talked about Williamsburg history. We talked about Impractical Jokers. We went all over the map.
Reality TV and its
reality TV and its authenticity. The point is, you want to be authentically you, and you want to develop a culture that's going to inspire loyalty to you, and you're going to have to give some loyalty away. So we hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you back here Thursday.
Thank you for listening to this show on Youngstown Studio. If you like our programming, we invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow our Facebook page, or subscribe to your favorite podcast platform like iTunes or Spotify. This is original Youngstown content, and we would appreciate you sharing the videos and the word about us. Thank you.